All right, let's get on to our big thoughts this week. Since it's kind of the midpoint of the year, I wanted to do some mid-season awards. Just go through some guys that we think are really balling out, deserve some recognition after 6 weeks of play here. So for our offensive player of the year, mid-season award, who you got?
Yeah, I'm gonna put it between two guys, and obviously one guy is going to depend on the latter half of the season. I think Kenneth Walker the third is you can't keep him out of it. I think he's been such an integral part of that program up there, and his play has been fantastic. And then my other one's Clifford. I think if Clifford can come back healthy and lead these guys through this back half of the season, it's going to be really hard to discredit him. If he can lead them, win out, go win a Big Ten championship, and then go play in a college football playoff, it's going to be really hard not to give the guy that, because that's a tough schedule. And as we saw, that offense goes as Cliff goes.
Yeah, I agree with that on Cliff. He would be, if there was a true MVP award, I think he's that guy. He is most valuable to his team.
Yep.
And we saw that in their game. You talked about Kenneth Walker. They need to start a legit Heisman campaign for him right now.
100%.
152 yards a game rushing, 9 rushing touchdowns. He's got an average of 7 a carry. And when I watch him, it's a hold your breath type situation, because you don't know if he's going to truck stick a dude and take it the distance. You don't know if he's going to shake a dude out of his shoes and take it the distance. I think he is really, really good. But the guy who I kind of want to go to, and he's a little bit off the board, but I think that he deserves a lot of praise for what he's done this year, is the quarterback in East Lansing, in Peyton Thorne. Here's a guy who is averaging 10 yards an attempt. He's got 14 touchdowns on the season against 2 interceptions. He's throwing for about 260 a game. He's completing a really good amount of his passes, 62% of them. I think that is another situation where if they didn't get the quarterback figured out, that offense would be trash, because their quarterback play last year was abysmal. It was not good. And he has done a great job of understanding the identity of the offense, of distributing the ball to the playmakers, of taking the ball when he needs to, as well, of being accurate and taking care of the football. He's done all the things right, and nobody expected him to be this good.
Yeah. And I think, people sit there and scoff at 62%, but with their philosophy offensively, like you said, he's averaging 10 yards attempt. He's not throwing bubble screens and hitches and getting jet sweeps and handing it off and boosting his. I mean, he's throwing a legit 62% at pushing the ball
down the field.
And that's what he has to do. And that's kind of what Mel Tucker has always done. Even when you look back at Colorado, his quarterbacks pushed the ball down the field. They weren't, dink and dunk and let's just nickel and dime them. They were like, listen, we're gonna figure out a way to establish a run. You guys are gonna attack. It's almost like that Bruce Arians type feel. And he, as long as he keeps playing, I could completely see that. And if they happen to knock a couple of these guys off, the Michigan State, the Penn State, the Ohio State, if they knock a couple of those guys off, he puts himself right in there. He plays well. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, and I think that'd be one of the things for him is, the table set for him. If he can go out there and he can be disruptive as a quarterback in those games, I think the conversation really heats up. Switch it over to defense. Who do you got for the defensive side of the ball?
So we just found out that Riley's apparently out for a little bit, but Riley Moss is my guy. I think he's just been playing so well. He's a ball hawk. I think he's a staple for that defense leader. So he's my guy. And obviously it's going to change depending upon if he can get back out there or not, and how quickly that happens. But that's a guy I want to highlight and give a lot of credit to.
I think he's doing a hell of a job. Difference maker would just be the word flat out there. On my side, I'm going a little bit off the board again. And this is a guy who I respect the hell out of, because he's not on a great football team. It's not a flashy brand. He's got a good player on the interior of his defensive line, but there's not another end that anybody's devoting resources to on his team is George Karloftis. And I met him over the summer. He's definitely a football guy. Like he gets excited, like, like he'll be a great coach one day if he wants to do that. But I watched game tape of him in multiple games, and this dude is at minimum getting double teamed. Against Notre Dame, they devoted so many resources to blocking him. It was ridiculous. Like, it absolutely blew my mind. And the crazy part about it was he was beating double teams. And there was one play where there were like 4 different guys that hit him at one point. It's absolutely nuts. And you can look at stats for something like this, or you can watch football games. And I think watching the games would lead you to believe that he's the best defensive player in this conference, because people go to any length to make sure that he can't make the football play. Right now, another guy who is really good, but he has the benefit of being around other good players, is Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan. He's a game record type, plays hard, motor, the whole deal. His benefit is he's got David Ojabo on the other side of that defensive line. So that's where I gave the edge to George Karloftis, is this man's got to eat on his own every single time, and he's still killing the game.
I think you bring up like the most interesting point, and it's so hard because of how much media has gotten into all of these things across college football. But when you have football guys sit there and turn on the game and turn on the tape, they notice things, they watch things a little bit different. And those points that you made, for anyone listening right now, like, those are great points to expand upon your knowledge, whether you played, whether you didn't play, whether you just watch. Like, don't listen to the talking heads. Like, go in there and evaluate it yourself, right? Like,
yes.
When you watch certain guys play, they may not have the stats, they may not have the team around them, but certain guys always figure out a way how to outplay their circumstances, really, is what it comes down to. And those guys need a lot of recognition. And the funny thing is, though, is the ball doesn't lie. The game always gives back. Like, that guy's probably going to go on and have a hell of a professional career if he stays healthy and all that stuff. But those guys need some recognition, and you got to be able to see the depth of the conference as a voter for those certain things, because it's just, when guys overcome that, it's fun to watch.
It is. That's the thing that stands out to me, is the dude plays as hard as anybody in the conference, and he's beating people even though they're trying to block him with 2. And he's not playing, I don't think, for as much in terms of the team as other guys are.
Yeah.
Like that always stands out to me in this day and age of football, where he probably could have gone out there for the first 3 games, balled out, and then said, you know what, I'm going to focus on myself. But he is out there getting just hammered every game for the love of it, because he ain't getting the stats right now, but he's making a difference, though, because his buddies are getting the stats.
Yeah, he's playing sound.
And that's always a difference maker. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about that guy at Michigan, Aiden Hutchinson, though, because the dude is fucking balling. Like, I watch his speed off the edge, and then when he doesn't make the play, the thing that stands out to me is he pursues the ball with intensity.
Never shuts off.
Never. And he celebrates his teammates, which I think is big, because a lot of guys don't do that stuff anymore. So those are my 2 guys. Freshmen, who you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the Ohio State backfield. I think it's Stroud and Travion. And I don't even think it's close. Yeah. So we'll see whoever pulls that out. But
yeah, I think it's pretty open and shut on that. I mean, what does CJ got? Like 800 yards passing and 10 touchdowns in the last 2 games.
Last 2 weeks. Yeah.
Henderson's going out there. It's 102 rushing, and then he's going to turn around and have 67 in the pass game as well.
Yeah, they're both great. They're going to be fun to watch for the next couple of years, and they're gonna drive that ship. Offensively, it's going to be on their back for the next few years, as long as they're in town.
You want the stat on those 2 guys?
I mean, shoot, dude, you're the stat guy. So
yeah, Big Ten Freshman of the Week honors have gone to C.J. Stroud or Travion Henderson every single week.
Every week, yeah. So
there's a stat on that. It's open and
done.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into this Coach of the Year, because I think there's one guy who's clear cut. There's another guy who we absolutely need to talk about, though.
So yeah, and here's my thing. I think this award in the Big Ten, if things keep playing out the way I think they're going to play out, it's going to be a fun race. You know, you got Shiano, you got Bielema up there having an opportunity again. But right now for me, it's Mel Tucker. The job he's done, the way he's motivated those guys, the way that they're playing, like we talked about, nobody had them anywhere in the stratosphere of where they're at right now in terms of competing and playing and the product they put on the field. And he just does a great job of motivating them. I think he's done a great job of establishing his expectations and his brand that he brought to that program, which is tough to do coming off of D'Antonio, who has been there so long and people are so used to it. I think he did a great job of kind of blending the two, giving the people what they want, but also, you know, being like, listen, guys, this is my program now and this is the direction I'm driving it. And I think he's done a great job of that.
Yeah. And I think Michigan State did the right thing in bringing in another tough guy, because sometimes you see these coaching hires and they'll go from one thing to another. But Dino was an all-time tough guy, always kind of had a scowl on his face, you know, like never looked too happy. And his team embodied that. They always had a scowl on their face. They never looked too happy. They were always salty. And then you follow that up with Mel, who I think is more energetic, but he's the same type of toughness and the same level of super intense about all the things that he believes it takes to win. And the team has really taken on his personality and his energy. And from what they were a year ago, and he was hired late in the cycle last year, it was like February and they didn't have spring practice. And it was a weird year to now being what they are, where a lot of people, and I admit to this every time I talk about it, I had them finishing in the basement. They're way better than that. That was something I was totally wrong on. But from where people expected them to be and where they were, frankly, a year ago to now, is a hell of a job in coaching. He went out in the portal. He got some guys like the dude he's a legit coach. Like, he is absolutely worth the money that they're paying him. The other guy we absolutely should talk about is Kirk Ferentz. He's been around the conference for forever. He's been around one place longer than anybody in the country has. That was a program that was dealing with a reckoning in the locker room with culture and with the way that players thought they were being treated, and with, frankly, some of the things that the coaching staff admitted to doing that they understood in hindsight weren't the right things. They had to rally a locker room, bring them back together in a very strange year last year that also saw a social reckoning just in society. And they got off to a terrible start. And then they went on a hell of a win streak that they've continued into this year. And in a lot of situations, they have been in control of their opponents, not necessarily domineering, but in control of situations of opponents and of games. And I think that he deserves credit for being able to keep a locker room together and then build something last year and continue it into this year.
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about Iowa. They're a cyclical program, right? And the only way that you can sustain that is if you do come around every 3 or 4 years and become somebody who can knock the best top team off in the conference. And Iowa's always been able to do that. And that doesn't come from anywhere but the top. You know what I mean? If you don't have a guy at the top who understands that, embraces it, and puts a lot of time, energy, and effort into development of players and consistency as it pertains to expectations and culture, you're never going to be able to do it. And I think Kirk has just mastered that. And to your point, he knows who they are. He never puts them in situations where they can't be successful. And he focuses, I think, heavily on the development side of things with players, because he's not going out and snagging 5 stars. You're not seeing 4 and 5 stars just flocking to Iowa. You know what I mean? But he does a great job of developing talent, putting them in situations to be successful, and instilling confidence in them. And you see it. They just keep rolling around every year.
Yep, definitely a developmental program. And he does, like you said, a great job every single year. Finally, I'm going to ask you for your mid-season conference champ game prediction. So who's making it from the West? Who's making it in from the East?
Right now, obviously, it's hard not to say Iowa from the West.
Yeah.
I mean, the East is so hard just because of what we touched on earlier. There's a buzzsaw coming the end of the month heading in through November. So I think Ohio State, as it sits with question marks at Penn State being, is Cliff going to be healthy? Is he going to ever be back to 100% this year? I think it's going to come down to, can Ohio State keep developing offensively and doing what they've been doing the last few weeks? And then, I think Michigan and Michigan State are teams where if they come in and play well, can both pull it off either. So it's going to come from one of those four. I know that's it's such an easy thing to say, and it's the obvious answer, but to me, it's the right answer. So,
yeah, I'm going Iowa. And then I'm going to be a homer on this one, but I'm going Ohio State. And I think this is going to happen in spite of their defense at times. Yeah. Ohio State's defense has scored the football in 4 consecutive games off of pick sixes. So if you're a Buckeye fan, that probably gives you hope that they can continue to take steps. They're still, in my mind, giving up far too many plays over their head. And that's always going to be an issue. And especially when you start to get to, Penn State with Parker Washington, Jahan Dotson, and we talked about Jalen Naylor and Jaden Reed from Michigan State. And I don't know if Michigan's got the over your head all the time threat, but we've seen Samerstill, who did a really good job of extending and catching a really tough ball in that game. And Cornelius Johnson has done a really good job stepping in for Ronnie Bell. So I think it'll be, in spite of defense, I'm going Ohio State against Iowa, though, in that game.